Dangote Refinery can provide the needed breather for Nigeria's public finances. Amen. So says the latest oil and gas report from Hill Denham Securities. The report is based on a recent visit to the Dangote Refinery, with Chapel Hill saying it is the solution to Nigeria's subsidy problem and will have a positive pass-through effect on the federal government of Nigeria's public finances. Joining us to discuss further, Mustapha Wahab, oil and gas analyst, Chapel Hill. He just came back from that refinery. Mustapha, you're welcome.
Yeah.
We need something positive this morning.
Absolutely.
So we are here to provide it to us. Yeah. Help us, please. Let's talk about the size. I think we put your report has a table with the Dangote Refinery right at the top, Africa compared to others there. Yep, there it is. So, so tell us, is there capacity? Is there a possibility to increase the capacity? I mean, how, as far as the refinery is concerned?
No talks yet on capacity expansion. But I guess, there should be room for it once, they start hitting, 90–95% utilization rates.
Yeah.
It also depends on, demand for the products. But as it stands, once it begins operation late 2023, it will be coming up at 650,000 barrels per day, which is obviously going to be the biggest in Africa.
Yeah.
Second to only Skida Refinery in Algeria, then Port Harcourt Refinery, and the rest.
See, we're trying to stay positive this morning, but there's a capacity utilization chart in the report, and if we put that up. Yeah, so should the Port Harcourt Refinery and Warri Refinery be included on the list of biggest refineries, considering they haven't produced anything over a period of time?
Okay, so I think utilization rate is different from installed capacity.
Okay. Right?
Installed capacity, whether or not they produce. Port Harcourt Refinery is 210 barrels per day capacity. It doesn't matter whether they produce or not, right? So we have to include it because, if someone comes today to say, look, I want to take over the refinery, I want to bring it back to life, then you'll be operating at an installed capacity of 210 barrels per day. So yes, we have to include it.
Let me ask you this, and this has been asked. I think we can take a look at the refinery at a glance, where you've got so you've got the cost there, capacity, the power. Assuming, and then also the additional gas from pipelines, so 570 megawatts power plant, and then the additional gas. Assuming that Nigeria in a perfect world had uninterrupted power supply, would they still have to build a plant, or considering the size and scale, it would have been needed regardless? What do you think?
That's one thing that you have to go through as a manufacturer, or whatever business that you do in Nigeria. You just have to protect yourself from some volatility or some unintended consequences, right? That's what the refinery is there for. The refinery is going to be launching with an independent, power plant, which again will remove it entirely from Nigeria's grid. Because the way oil and gas, industry works is that they probably would have signed, a take-or-pay agreement with some investors. So if power is out and you are connected to the national grid, what do you tell your guys when they want to ask for their products, right? So what you want to do, you just want to exonerate yourself from anything that would have to do with, Nigerian macro indices or infrastructure. So hence the reason why it is imperative for them to build up plants that would fully function and then, supply the entire plants.
Gosh, and man, the expense, that $20 billion valuation, do you think that's probably higher by this time?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It all happens across different sectors. Sometimes you want to build a sugar refining plant, but before you do it, you have to build road network connecting to that, refinery. Beyond that, you have to do a lot of things. So in Nigeria alone, because of the infrastructure challenges, when you want to do,
you build your own infrastructure.
You have to build your own infrastructure.
Gosh.
Hence the reason why the prices are probably a lot higher compared to what you see, across the globe.
Wow. Talk us through this table where you say domestic oil revenue could grow threefold if the federal government of Nigeria sells domestic oil to the refinery. So talk us through this table.
Right. So Rotus, there's a lot to unpack here, right?
Yeah.
So first off is that we have a domestic consumption obligation of around 445,000 barrels per day.
Yeah.
So what we do currently is that instead of refining it domestically, we don't have refinery. You take it abroad, exchange it for refined products, and you bring it down to Nigeria, and then you sell at a subsidized rate. So at the end of the day, when you sell that 445,000 barrels per day, which annualized comes to about 160,000 barrels per day, you get up to 2.4 trillion, at least based on NNPC's number as of 2021. But what we're saying is that assuming 100 barrels per day crude oil price, and with that 445,000 barrels per day for domestic consumption, assuming FGN sells directly to Dangote, right? If you assume $100 per barrel oil price, then you should be able to get up to $16 billion, which translates to about 6.8 trillion in Naira. Because obviously, once you sell to Dangote, government would then say everybody should go to Dangote to go get their PMS products.
Right.
But the question, I mean, obviously Dangote is not going to sell, you know, at a subsidized rate for PMS.
Right.
So the question then becomes, can Nigeria really withstand, you know, higher PMS price products in the country? I guess.
And he's a businessman. He's a for-profit businessman. He's not going to sell subsidized.
It won't sell at subsidized rates.
Right.
So what it then means is that Nigeria should just be listening up or looking forward to buying PMS at, you know, market reflective rates.
I cannot wait for whoever becomes president of this nation next year, and all these things are going to be discussing. What about the issue of oil theft and Nigeria's falling oil production? We've got a chart. Yeah, this is your chart from the report.
Yeah.
Lowest oil production in Lord knows how long it's been recorded. Is that a factor with the functioning Dangote Refinery at full capacity?
It would have been a factor if Dangote is going to be relying solely on Nigeria's crude.
Okay.
But the plant is built such that it can process different kind of grades. So beyond getting from Nigeria, it can get crude from anywhere in the world, bring it to the country, and then refine domestically and sell, you know, to the customers. But Nigeria's production challenges or volatility would not necessarily affect, you know, Dangote's, you know, plant production, and that's basically because of the fact that the man would probably sign different agreements, you know, across, you know, different crude producing, you know, countries or companies that would be supplying crude instead of relying solely on Nigeria. Because if you do that, then these production challenges will probably be affecting, you know, our production.
Can you speak to because that doesn't mean, I mean, just because the refinery is not being impacted by oil theft and oil production, the refinery is on its own and it's independent of that. Still, that doesn't mean we don't focus on this issue of oil theft and low production. How do we address those issues? I mean, I'm not putting you on the spot to solve it. I'm not saying you should solve it, but I just want us to acknowledge the fact that this is an issue.
It is. I guess that's why your IOCs are also living.
Yeah.
So it's best for you to operate in the offshore projects where, you know, it's difficult for anybody to go there to go and break pipelines. Yeah, and profitability there is at their highest. Yeah. So again, all those, you know, onshore project pipeline. What is going on is that domestic guys or local oil producers are now taking up, you know, those sort of assets. I've always said this thing that Seplat has been able to engage with host community in the best way possible, such that, you know, they are able to, you know, block any access from any vandalism or anything from on their pipeline. I guess, you know, those domestic producers are just able to engage with host communities and any other, you know, issues that they are facing in domestic markets compared to how the IOCs are handling it. Yeah, so maybe once IOCs start leaving those, you know, onshore assets and domestic guys, you know, start taking them, I guess we'll start to see some sort of, you know, repression from that, you know, volatility that we see on oil production.
I think we've already touched on fuel subsidies, but again, how does the refinery end, just to go back to that prior point, how does the Dangote Refinery end fuel subsidies in Nigeria? It
provides FGN with the needed or with the nice ease for them to completely deregulate, remove subsidy in the market. So that's what's going to happen. So like we said earlier, Dangote is not going to sell PMS products, you know, into the domestic market at subsidized rates, right? It's probably going to be selling at market reflective rates. So that just, you know, provide FGN that ability to remove subsidy completely and then focus more on other infrastructure need that, you know, those funds can obviously be channeled, you know, towards. I guess that's the best way, you know, this can work.
We just had a chart there looking at how much Nigeria pays as far as, that's Nigeria in black, 42 cents compared to, you know, a number of other nations. You've heard the news of the Independent Petroleum Marketers Association saying that we should expect the mother of all fuel queues this week. How do we again, I'm putting you on the spot, sorry, how do we solve this fuel supply shortage issue
I guess the problem is really from the government, because at the end of the day, when you ask them why are you subsidizing PMS, they will say the majority of Nigerians are poor. But really, when we checked some data, you know, that was released by the World Bank, what we saw was that the bottom 40% income distribution household in Nigeria actually account for only 3%, you know, of PMS, you know, consumption.
Right.
It means that Nigerians are actually, Nigerian government is actually subsidizing, you know, PMS for the wealthier, because, why would, you, Rotus, a big boy, buying PMS at subsidized rates from government.
Right.
FGN is just basically subsidizing to people who could afford, to buy market reflective rates instead of, I mean, I just find it really ridiculous because at this point there is no justification of why this subsidy should continue.
And we are just mere months away from another election, and the new administration is coming in. Is there? Look, we've been discussing fuel subsidy forever. It's just on and on and on. Do you think the next administration actually bites the bullet and removes this? Because there isn't much optimism there. How do you know they don't just kick the can down the road to the next?
No, they have to. Yeah. They have to, because we're already at the point where retained revenue in Nigeria is not even able to fund recurrent expenditure. We're now sort of borrowing to fund recurrence, which is becoming crazy, right? So, I mean, at some point, you would have to find a way to get it out. Once you get it out, you have enough money, to pay salaries, to fund infrastructure. We're doing an assignment this morning, and what we saw in-house in Chapel is that Nigerian infrastructure, need actually is up to about 14.2 billion that we have to spend per annum going over a period of 5-10 years. But we are only budgeting about $5.9 billion, right? So that
Thank you for saying dollars. I wanted you to clarify whether that was dollars or naira. Okay, yeah.
That leaves a deficit of up to $8.2 billion, right? So if we can take away subsidy, we also saw that between 2012 and 2022, we've spent up to $38 billion in subsidy payments. So if you can take that away, I mean, you have enough fund to fund infrastructure, to pay salaries and whatnot, rather than borrowing money to be funding recurrence. It doesn't make sense at this point.
We have a couple minutes. Tell us how big. I haven't been to the refinery, but Chika Bono, who was right before, he's visited it. You've been there. It's like a country. It's like a state on its own. How big is this thing?
It's massive.
Yeah,
it's massive. The moment you enter through the gates, anybody who is saying anything negative about the refinery, they would have to change their mind. A lot has been done, Rotus. A lot has been done. It's beyond what people can describe to you. You have to get there to see what's going on. So once you see it, you will know that there's a lot of hope, for Nigeria's downstream sector. And
also, I guess it's situated in a free trade zone, so you can also export. So there's also the matter of reducing our FX obligations for imported fuel, yes?
Yes, absolutely. So I think we're importing 100% of what we consume PMS today in Nigeria. So again, that's close to 40% of our import bill in Nigeria. So if you take that away, I mean, that leaves a lot of room for the CBN to supply the FX market and obviously remove this liquidity that we're facing in recent times.
Mustapha Wahab, oil and gas analyst, Hill Denham. Always a pleasure having you. You bring so much insight to the oil and gas sector. Thank you so much for joining us.